Villa Park, June 18th, Euro 96. Craig Brown's Scotland are on the verge of making history. They could qualify for the second stage of a major football finals for the first time ever.
I still remember getting a wee bit of a cold shiver.
Well, there was great excitement.
We'd grown to about 7 feet.
Difficult to describe, it doesn't get any better.
This is massive.
You won't forget these days.
England modestly claimed that football was coming home when in May 1992 they won the right to host Euro 96. The neighbours, it seemed, had stolen Scotland's game, and the Scots desperately wanted to put the English in their place.
It was a must for us to qualify and get to England, because we knew we would bring thousands across the border.
You can imagine the situation, the finals in England and Scotland not competing. Now, I was threatened, the chief executive of the SFA said we've got to be there.
In January 1994, Scotland found out who they'd have to beat to book a place in the finals. Drawn in a difficult group alongside Russia and Greece, the Scots' first match was a tricky away tie against Finland.
Well, any opening game of a qualifying group's very important if your hopes are to get off to a good start.
I think you really need to win the first qualifying game. It gets you off and running, and then you're flying for the rest of the tournament.
Stays pass, measured for Boyd. It's a fine cross, there's Shearer! It's the opening goal for Scotland!
Scotland got off to a flying start, quite literally.
Clarence playing it in. Across the far side, the shot goes in and Scotland has scored!
I remember doing a silly celebration, lifting my knees up. And I think it was Duncan Shearer coming across to give me a bear hug. We won the game 2-0, which was a terrific start. Gave us a big boost as a team and as a country. Got the fans and everybody back home were really buzzing.
Only one defeat in the next 6 games meant that by August 1995, Scotland were second in the table behind Russia. Despite that, Craig Brown managed to finish in 4th place in a Who Do You Want to Manage Scotland poll. When the previous gaffer, Andy Roxburgh, resigned in 1993, the media and fans alike clamoured for a glamorous replacement from Liverpool or Manchester United. What they got was an ex-school teacher from unglamorous Clyde. But Wee Brown's credentials were good. He had coached the under-16s to the 1989 World Cup final and had been Scotland's assistant manager for 7 years. So he might not have been the people's choice, but he did have the players in his corner.
Craig was one of the best managers I've played under. He utilised what he had to the maximum.
Okay, one touch in the side, let's go Colin, yes!
You can't make the players better in 3 days, but what you can do is you can get them organised, you can get them focused, you can get them confidence, give them self-belief, and confidence comes with knowing the opposition inside out.
Well, certainly Craig, done his homework on the opponents, and we would have meetings after meetings after meeting after meetings.
Brown found it hard to shake off the label of school teacher, but perhaps he didn't do himself any favours.
Was certainly a stickler for detail, and everyone had to wear the same things.
You liked everybody to be immaculate. If everybody wears a pair of trousers, a pair of tracky bottoms, everybody had to wear a pair of tracky bottoms. We just liked everything to be neat and tidy, and to be regimental.
I was very emphatic about certain things, and maybe with hindsight, maybe the wrong things, I don't know. But there are things that a manager can control. You can control their dress, their turnout. You can control their timekeeping. You can't control a victory. You can try. You can try and minimise the risk of failure.
With 3 matches to go, a win over Greece at Hampden was essential if the Scots were to advance to the finals. Brown's class of 95 needed to be marked present. But then came the sick notes. Call-offs from Duncan Ferguson, Colin Hendry and John Spencer. The good news was that Ali McCoist was back in the squad after 2 years of injury. Then came a bombshell. Fully fit Rangers goalkeeper Andy Gorham walked out in Scotland. Brown was forced to call upon his Mr. Reliable, Jim Leighton.
Rangers had important games coming up, big bonuses at stake, and I suspected that maybe Andy's mind was distracted, let's put it that way.
Hampden, August 95. With less than 20 minutes to go and no goal scored, Brown played his trump card, the Joker.
I remember that when we were struggling a bit against Greece at home, and the crowd's a bit flat, and You know, there are players who are cheer subs, I always feel.
McCoist goes on for cap number 47, looking to add his 16 goals.
But it was always as reassuring to have Ali McCoy sat inside, because you just knew he's that type of player. He's just got it, you know, he's destined to score goals.
There's John Collins with the cross. McCoist goes in! He scored!
It's the kind of thing a manager dreams about, you know, the substitute going on and scoring the winning goal. I mean, you can't take credit for that. You just say, I was very, very lucky.
The 17th international goal, and Scotland have a precious lead.
The win against Greece fired Scotland to joint top of the group. Subsequent home victories against Finland and San Marino secured second place behind Russia. Scotland had qualified for the finals of Euro 96. They were heading for England. In December 1995, the draw for the finals took place. Scotland would play Holland and Switzerland, but who would their third opponents be?
England.
It was a tough group. Holland looked as if they were certainly one of the favourites, along with England being the host nation. So ourselves and Switzerland were probably rated third and fourth in most people's eyes, but just the nature of playing against England and hopefully having an upset in that game would give you an outstanding chance of qualifying. You know, try to be the first Scotland team to progress to the second stages. That was always something that was posed to us, and it was exciting time.
Scotland had not played the old enemy since 1989, when the traditional clash between the teams had been shelved after 250 arrests in Glasgow. The Scots and English had clashed on the big screen in the blockbuster Braveheart, and the Tartan Army painted their faces in tribute to that Scottish legend, Mel Gibson. Euro 96 was to be the first time Scotland had played England in a competitive international tournament. For the first time, the result really mattered. It was Braveheart 2, hopefully with a happy ending. Brown took the squad for the pre-tournament build-up to the land that gave the William Wallace story to the world, America.
I got very alarming information from our travel agent. Maurice Brannan said, look, we've only got 11 seats in business class. The rest of the boys will have to go in the economy. And I said, this is not one for me.
And I've got to confess, Craig and I, between us, made the decision that we felt that the people with the most caps would get the first class tickets.
Being about 6 caps at that time, along with Spencer and Gemmell and Scott Booth and people like that, we were banged up right down the back, whilst I think all the staff, all the main players, and dare I say it, all the badges from the SFA sitting down there with, you know, leg room that they could have a sleep in.
I was quite near the very front, and I could hear John Spencer right at the very back. He slaughtered Craig Brown for 7 hours, continuous, sending him letters, throwing things at him, hitting him in the back of the head with beer tins, everything. Spenny was very loud and not happy.
It was great because when we got there, when I wanted to pick the teams for a practice match, it was easy. Economy against business class, and the tackles were going in, and Spenny was moaning for 2 weeks.
There were few complaints at the stateside training methods as the team were getting fitter, and everyone, even Brown, was getting well tanned. Scotland played 2 friendlies against the USA and Colombia and lost both. But hey, who cares? The results weren't important. Brown's team had given it their all in preparation for the battle ahead, and despite the bruises, the players were bonding. Even if not everyone remembered their kit bag.
I run with Ali McCoist, who never brought toothpaste, toothbrush, razor, blades for 8 years, never had anything. So I would continually come back to the room and he'd be using my toothbrush, my shaving foam. He was a nightmare.
The camaraderie was fantastic. I mean, the wit and the humour, with the likes of McCoist and Spencer and all these guys involved. Crazy times.
We went down to Madison Square Gardens to see Rod Stewart. End of the night, 20,000 plus Americans. Rod Stewart then announces that the Scottish soccer team are going to come up onto the stage, and I can just remember looking around, seeing the lads doing the Congo up onto the stage at Madison. You just look around, and all these guys and women and men in the audience just thinking, who the bloody hell are this lot, you know?
All these women throwing knickers at us.
And some of the boys are a bit shy to dance, a bit tense, but 1 or 2 had maybe had a few drinks, were giving it big licks with their electric guitars. I won't name names. Actually, I will. Mr. McCoist and Mr. McKinley. Billy McKinley, that is. They were letting it rip, and what a laugh we had. And days like that, you never forget.
The tour to America was fantastic. We're a very close-knit group of players, to begin with. But I think going over there, it really did pull us even closer together.
Brown's team had had a great trip, despite the result. Now back in the UK, Brown was struggling with one of the biggest decisions of his managerial career. Should he give the gloves to Leighton, who'd kept goal in the last 3 competitive internationals, or recall the guy who'd walked out on his country in its hour of need?
For the first game against Holland, I had to make a choice between Jim Leighton and Andy Gorham. And, it was a really difficult thing to do.
It was 2 days before the game. He went and spoke to Jim, and then he came and spoke to me. He didn't even speak to us together.
For a manager often accused of being too loyal for too long to his players, Brown's decision was startling.
And it's the hardest thing I've possibly had to do, to tell an experienced internationalist who has played brilliantly in the qualifying campaign that he's not starting in the team.
Jim was devastated. I know. I've never seen too many legends like that in tears, and obviously it was upsetting for him. I'd have been the same.
Villa Park, June the 10th, Euro 96, match day 1.
The outstanding memories arriving at Villa Park, and seeing the Scots fans and the Dutch fans, it's so colourful. And then this guy with a big tartan scarf and a Scotland shirt came walking towards the front of the bus.
Martin, with Martin on his back, but it was one of our shirts, the actual shirts that we're playing. All the rest are replicas. Now I'm looking, it's a big lad with a bald head. I'm like, question, that's Brian Martin, that's big buff there, look. And sure enough, there he is walking up with a flag, even though he wasn't playing.
He's a guy I think he got 3 or 4 Scotland caps, but he was there with Scotland flag and one of his Scotland shirts, and that lifted all the lads as well to see him there. It was you won't forget these days.
Andy Gorham and his defence had to be at their most resilient to keep out the marauding Dutch.
Great save by Gorham, and Scotland have survived. The selection of Andy Gorham justified in that moment.
But Gorham wasn't the only one who used his hands that day.
Vitchke's corner. Scrambled off the line there by Collins. Appeals for handball by the Dutch.
For a short moment, my heart stopped. I thought, oh no, please, please.
Yeah, I've looked away, I'm like, no, penalty.
There's nothing really I could do about it. Very fortunate, definitely hit my hands. Some referees would have given a penalty and a red card, but it was my lucky day and Scotland's lucky day.
And I've not heard a whistle, so you just carry on, the lifesaver, I'm looking, and Johnny's looking, went, oh, just when things, a bit of luck we needed.
The final whistle. Scotland have survived. They've earned the crucial point, and it's all even in Group A. It's Holland 0, Scotland 0.
Scotland really rode their luck. But it was a great defensive team performance, and Brown's hard training programme in America was paying off. But there was no getting away from the fact that the Scots were a shade shy in front of goal.
We were set up to be difficult to play against and difficult to break down. If there was one wee criticism that I don't think we afforded enough players forward at times.
And I think up front we probably didn't have enough strikers that were goal scorers.
We had very, very good pros, excellent players, but we didn't have just the wee touch of genius that maybe Dalglish and going back, Jimmy Johnson had and Jim Baxter had. That makes a difference to a team.
Wembley, the den of the 3 lions, England's hallowed turf. There was no place on earth Scotland would prefer to win a football match. 20,000 Scottish supporters were about to invade London, even though only 8,000 of them had tickets for the match. The police thought the Tartan Army were a major threat to public safety. Mostly, they were only a threat to themselves. The real battles were on the park. Club loyalties forgotten as friends became foes. Blackburn's Alan Shearer against clubmate Colin Hendry. Dury, McCoist, McCall and Gorham against Rangers teammate Paul Gascoigne. And Tottenham's Colin Calderwood against Teddy Sheringham. England had struggled to a 1-1 draw in their opening match against Switzerland, so the Scots' expectations were high. But it was a nervous time in the dressing room.
Everyone's got their own sort of pre-match routine. You know, some people look very relaxed and sit down and look as if they're very comfortable. I was a little bit different.
You get into all sorts of strange noises and battering his own head with fists, and you'd sort of, well, everyone to their own thing. You know, there's some players that, you know, like to shout and bawl, and others just want to maybe sit down and have a quiet moment.
And you can't really hear much in the tunnel, and that's the truth. You can't really hear much, but the closer you get, the noisier it gets, and then as soon as you get outside onto the track, it just hits you. It's you certainly know you're involved in a battle then.
Doesn't get any better. You won't get a prouder moment in anybody's life than walking out wearing the blue jersey at Wembley. But I promised my kids that watch Daddy in the telly and I'll wink and it'll be for you guys. So a lot of people thought I was showing off, but it was really for my two little daughters who were watching the television.
Coming out, walking out the tunnel, brilliant. As you walked out, you know, the Scotland flags and that, the atmosphere, even though it was supposed to be only 7,000-8,000, you know, they were in great volume, and everyone got a lift from that.
And we were always going to be in the minority, but the Scottish fans would always outsing the English supporters anyway, and that was never in doubt. We were always going to win that battle.
The war had begun. Wembley became a battlefield. Tempers and temperatures were rising. The first half finished goalless. At the break, the Tartan Army scored a victory in the Quarrel Stakes. Too bad you don't get points for karaoke. Meanwhile, in the dressing room, the players were keeping their cool.
At half-time there's not a great deal spoken, in all honesty. People think it's a time where there's a lot of discussions. You come in, you get your socks down, you get your feet up, you get as much fluid into you as possible.
I think the temperatures were in the early hundreds, so with the ice towels and the water and everything to try and cool us down. And we knew that at some stage fatigue would kick in, and that if we can keep going, keep doing what we're doing, don't make any mistakes, you get your opportunity.
Well, the key thing that Craig had said to us was don't lose an early goal.
Here's Neville.
I think I had a choice. Gascoigne was running in and I could see him running in, and I didn't know whether to leave Shearer or go to him, so I've sort of stepped away thinking I've got to get to Gascoigne. Andy Gorham gets you out of jail a little bit, but Shearer finished it and we were one down from nowhere really.
It was a shattering blow and the Scots looked down and out.
But what happens in the game, you need a little bit of fortune, and it doesn't matter when it comes or how it comes, but penalty I thought it was, and if we dispatch it, I really thought that with a chance of going on to win the game.
And what you do is you turn away. I try to remember all my superstitious things I did at Tottenham when we had a penalty.
Do I watch it? Do I not watch it? Can I watch it?
We're all tense, we're all feeling uptight, praying that he's going to hit it well and hit it at the back of the net.
I feel as if somebody's just punched you in the solar plexus when you missed and you're really down.
I've never really spoke about this, you know, and really, when I was landing my left foot to strike it with my right foot, it was a surreal moment, because you can imagine I'm committed to strike, and the ball half turns. So it's one of the few penalties I've ever just blasted, because I feared that I just would fall over the ball or something strange, and Dave Seaman got lucky. You know, he dived the wrong way and it hit his elbow.
Well, Gary McAllister will be distraught about that if Scotland can't get back on terms.
You've got to get your head up and see what's happening in that pitch, and unfortunately what I saw was far from pleasant.
If it was me or anyone else, it was such a classic piece of course, Gaza scoring against Andy Gorham.
I think there's only one man on the pitch that could have scored that goal, and it was your man. But great player. Looking back, great goal. You can't take it off, and it's devastating talking about it.
I think a lot of people didn't realise prior to that, when we've got the penalty, the boards are going up on the side. He's actually coming off his Gaza.
You know, it just shows you the luck in football. We missed a penalty. He was going to be coming off. But when we missed the penalty, they kept him on, and he scored the great goal to clinch the match. So, you know, sometimes the fate just goes against you.
And the final whistle has gone. The match has been won by England.
The time we got in the bus, it was a sombre bus. But I especially remember Gary sitting on his own. And I've never seen anyone look so grey in all my life. He was absolutely devastated.
We went back to the hotel, and it was a bad situation, just been beat by England. And Gary's missed a penalty in front of millions of people. And he's a proud boy, Gary, and he doesn't like letting people down. He's a great player.
He was up in his room, he must have been phoning home, but he came down, most of the lads were there. And the chant went up quite spontaneously, Gary Mike, Gary Mike, Gary Mike.
Craig recognised that everybody was on a low and very quickly tried to rally the troops. And he's, listen, he says, I can remember his words to this day when we get back to the telly. He got us together and said it was one of the proudest moments of his managerial career. The effort, and the work rate the players had put in that day.
Everybody felt that we'd all missed it together. We win together, we scored the penalty together, we missed the penalty together. That was the atmosphere, and that was the way, the bond we had in the group. So we all felt bad after the game, but we just move on. That's football.
A lot of things got said that day and that night, and I think that's the same for reinforcements. We drunk the bar dry that night.
I remember Craig Brown coming down at some point saying, "Come on lads, we need to calm down a bit," and the boys went, "Get off with you," sort of thing. And next thing I know, I think Stuart McCall's almost got Craig Brown in a headlock. It was like this, and he's singing songs, and he was in the right state.
So to the last Group A matches. Any of the 4 teams could still qualify. Now, this is complicated, so listen carefully. A draw would be enough for both England and Holland. Scotland needed to gub the Swiss at Villa Park and hope there was a winner at Wembley. The Scots were counting on goals. Anybody's goals.
So getting in against the Swiss, we did have to be more offensive. We did have to, unlock the shackles and go for them a bit.
We had watched Switzerland. For us, they were an average team, and they were there for the taking. We felt we could score 2-3 goals.
2 or 3 goals from a team who hadn't scored even.
I remember the stadium just getting louder and louder and louder. And they were lifted by the performance of the team. And when we missed a couple of chances, I can't remember a game where we've played in where we've had so many efforts, so many half chances, good chances at goal. We were in the ascendancy.
But for the fans, first and foremost, whether we qualified or not, they just wanted something to cheer about, and they wanted a goal. And what a goal they got. Absolutely tremendous screamer for Ali McCoist.
Quite unusual for Ali McCoist. Usually has 3 yards, 2 yards tap-ins, a couple of hundred of them.
And of course he ran over to celebrate at the bench with me. And afterwards, when asked, why did you run to Brown there to the bench, he says, I didn't run to celebrate, I ran to ask him why I wasn't on from the start in the Holland game and the England game. So, he's always got an answer, Ali.
Over at Wembley, England were 1-0 ahead. The goal difference was coming down and Scotland's chances of qualifying were going up. Incredibly, the Tartan Army were supporting England.
And suddenly there was a roar went round Villa Park. So you knew something had happened. Now, we hadn't scored, so it could only be that England had scored.
That's met by Ship.
And then there's punters behind the goal, all the Scotland fans. Goalie, it's 2-0.
Shearer.
Goalie, 3-0. I'm looking at him, they're taking the mickey out of me. Goalie, 4-0, but then you could feel it right around the stadium, so it must be right, that's just qualified. 4-0, and we're winning 1-0. All we have to do is keep the ball at the net.
With half an hour to go, Scotland were through to the second round of a major championship for the first time ever. All they had to do was keep the Swiss out and hope that Holland didn't score at Wembley.
I still remember getting a wee bit of a cold shiver because at that time it looked as if we might be through.
We were running a bit quicker, we were that bit stronger because we knew the result.
I pulled the guys back and I said, just sit, we're okay. We don't need to go chasing, we don't want to lose one stupidly here.
I always remember seeing that sign of play calmly, don't expose yourself too much.
But that lasted for 10 minutes only.
I remember going over for the throw-in and you see sort of glum faces and Craig and Alec Miller, I think, talking about stuff.
Well, obviously we were getting information from the other game, the England-Holland game, and when we realised that Kluivert scored, we had to have a complete alteration in tactics.
It was a case of just open the floodgates. We were just trying to get that goal, that second one, to try and win the game and get us through. It was that important.
It was like chickens with a head, you run about, you just want to get the ball in the box. It's chaos, it's 100 mile an hour. We're desperate to get that one goal that would put us through.
And the final whistle is gone, I think. It has. Scotland have won by 1-0, but it will not be enough.
By a goal, we don't make it.
At one stage through that game against Switzerland, we were actually there. If the referee had blown the final whistle at that time, we were through. But then that was another glorious failure for Scotland, a major championship.
You can't get too upset or let them say you're too upset. You are upset, but you've got to be brave about it and say, well, you know, the famous last words, you know, we did our best.
I remember doing the lap of honour, and it was as if we'd won the European Championship. I was so proud of the team, the squad. Just so proud to be Scottish and to be there.
It was almost like a winning reception we got from the fans. Still quite emotional, actually. Traipsing around, seeing people from Stranraer. I actually saw someone from Stranraer who I knew, and it was sad, emotional, but a great memory.
Holland went out to France in the next round, while England made it to the semi-finals but lost to Germany on penalties. The Germans, under future Scotland manager Bertie Vogts, went on to win the tournament. But even by Scotland standards, the team of '96 were unlucky. Another tournament, another cruel blow.
You're thinking, well, that's Scotland to a T, innit?
If things went smoothly, it'd be boring. You know what I mean? The Scots seem to find ways of turning victory into defeat.
Every game we played with great Scottish heart. And I think that in every match, every player gave us all.
I thought we've been very unlucky in the past, but I thought particularly at Euro '96 we were inches away.